Hello friends, welcome back to the another video, and in this video we are going to talk about CSS Flexbox. For a long time, the only reliable cross-browser compatible tool for creating layouts were these floats and positions. And we all have used them in the past and many of us are using currently. These are absolutely fine, they work well, but some way they are a little limiting and frustrating. I myself was very comfortable in using the floats and positions for creating layouts. But when I use Flexbox, I realized that a lot of things can be achieved very easily and with very less code. So this is the power of Flexbox. So in the next few minutes, I will be teaching you everything about Flexbox that you need to know in a very simplified way. So make sure you watch the complete video and let's get started. So to understand the video better, you need to have a basic understanding of HTML and CSS. If you are new, then make sure you check out my HTML and CSS crash course. I will add the link in the description below. Also make sure you subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So before we begin with the Flexbox, let's take a look on the layouts that were prior to the Flexbox. We were using display block for the sections. We were using display inline or display inline block for the text. We were using display table for the two-dimensional data table, and we were using positions and floats on our elements. But these layouts were having some limitations and some problems. Let's take a look on the problems we were facing with these layouts. The first one was the lack of alignment capabilities. It was not easy to align the elements vertically. If we wanted to give some space between the elements, then we either need to use margin or padding. And those margin and padding were absolute values and not the relative values based on the screen sizes. Also, it was not possible to grow the elements in proportion. If we wanted an element to have a 200 width and the other one has a double of it, then we has to give it 400 pixel. But with the Flexbox layout, you can grow the elements in the ratios 1:2 or 2:1. So what is this flexible box module? It is commonly known as the Flexbox. And is it a CSS framework? No, it's not a CSS framework. It is designed for one-dimensional layout model. One-dimensional layout model means it deals with the one dimension at a time, either row or a column. It differs from the CSS layout, which is a two-dimensional model, as it controls the rows and the columns at the same time. The key important part in the Flexbox is the axis, the main axis and the cross axis. Let's take a look on what is the main axis. The main axis is defined by the direction of the flow. So in the diagram, we can see there is a flex container, and the flex container has three flex childs, item 1, item 2, and item 3. And the flow direction is rho. That is, the main axis will be a horizontal line. In the next example, we see that there is a flex container with the items and the flow direction is column. So in this case, the main axis will be vertical line. Now let's take a look on the cross axis. The cross axis is perpendicular to the main axis. So if we have a flow direction of rho, then the horizontal line will be the main axis and a vertical line will be the cross axis. And similarly, the cross axis for the column will be a horizontal line and the main axis will be the vertical line. And one more thing to understand about is the start and end. So in the Flexbox, by default, all the child items are at the start line, and we can take it to them and to the end line, or we can make it to the center. So let's try some code and let's take a look on the code. All right, so I already have an HTML boilerplate code ready. And the next thing we are going to do is we are going to create. So if we want to use the Flexbox properties, we need to have a Flex container and we need to have the Flex items. So let's create the Flex container and the Flex items. So I will create a div and I will give a class of Flex container, and then I will create the Flex items. So I will create the flex item. I will give a flex item 1 and I'm going to create 3 flex items. So I will just change it to 2. This will become 3, and I will put some content so that we can see the content on the screen. And I will change it 1 and 2. All right. And also I want to show you the axis which I am talking about, because the flow direction of the flex items is on the horizontal axis, or it's on the cross axis, is on the main axis or on the cross axis. So I will give a main axis, and I'm going to create another div for cross axis, and I'll save it. So now you can see that, so I have already applied some styles to them, and they are not too complex. They are very simple. I have a flex container, and I have given a width of 100%. And then I have the flex items 1, 2, and 3. And each one of them is having a width of 120 pixel and a minimum height of 50, 100, and 150 pixel respectively. And I have chosen some random colors and given the background or given the borders to it. So now if you create a new item, you can see that all the items, flex items, are one below the other, or all the elements are one below the other. So you can imagine it, the container as your section on your HTML page, and then each item you can think as a content. Inside this section you have the content, and you want to place a content next to each other. So if you want to place the content next to each other, then we will just add some properties to the parent. So when we use the flex box, there are some properties which to be added at the parent element, and some properties which we add at the child elements. So the properties we add to the parent, we called it as a flex container, and the properties which we add to the child, we call it as a flex items. So we will first see all the properties for the flex container. So the first property is to make the container as display flex. And when I do display flex, you will see that now all the elements are in a horizontal line, or you can say it's on the main axis. So the direction in which the flex items are flowing, whether they are in a row direction or a horizontal direction, or whether they are in a column form or a vertical direction, that will define the main axis. So in this case, the main axis is the horizontal line. That means the flex direction is row, and the cross axis will always be perpendicular to the main axis. You can change the flow of the flex items, and by using the property called flex direction, and currently I will write it row, so nothing will change because by default the flex direction is row. And if I want to make it column, then I will add a column, and all the elements will be aligned in the column. All right. So for now, we will just see and focus on the row. So it's very similar that all the properties which you apply on the row can also be applied on the column. It's just the flow of direction, whether it's a row or whether it's a column. So the next thing we will see that how we can justify the items in the flex container, and how we can distribute the space between these flex items. So I will write a justify content and flex start. So if I do flex start, nothing will happen because by default all the flex items are at the start line of the flex container. And if I want that all the items should be at the end line of the container, then I will change it to the flex end, and all the items will go to the end of the container. If you want to have a space between the flex items, then you have three different property values you can use. You can use space around. Let's see first using the space around. It will give a space around each of the flex items. So now you can see that there is a space between each of the flex items. So if I want this space to be an evenly spaced, then I will do that space evenly, and it will give an even space to each of the child items. Now there is an even space between each of the child item. And if I want that there should be a space between them, then I will do a space between. And this will give me a space between each of the child items. So it's very easy with the Flexbox to distribute the space between the child items and to make them align center. If I want all the child elements to be in center, then I will write it and they all will come in a center. So that's the power of the Flexbox, which I mean from a single property you can do all the alignment and you can do all the justification of your child elements or the flex items. One thing to notice that if we use the flex container and then if we try to reduce the screen size, these flex items will shrink and they will try to fit inside the container. But there is a property that if you want that when the screen size is reduced, the flex items should go to the next line, then you can use flex wrap. Let me add flex wrap. By default, it's no wrap. And when I do the flex wrap, it will go to the next line. You can see that now when I applied the flex wrap, the item is no longer trying to fit in the same row and it flows to the next line. So that is the flex wrap. So for now, I will comment it out. All right, the next property I want to show you is now we have seen that with justify content, we can justify our content towards the main axis. But if we want that our flex items to be aligned on the cross axis, then we will use align items. And align items by default, the value is stretch. So if you see when I have the value as stretch, nothing is changed. But one thing here is that in the start, I told you that each of the item 1 or item 2 item 3 have their own minimum height, but they are not taking that minimum height of their own. They are trying to take the maximum height among the child, and the maximum height was 150 pixel for the item 3. But if we want them to have their original height, I will just do that flex start and I will save it. So when I do a flex start, now they are on their original or the actual heights. So now all the content are aligning themselves on the cross axis. And if I try to do flex end and I'll save it, then they will all be aligned at the end of the flex box. So we can also do that flex center. They all will be in the center to the cross axis. So you can say that the align items is same as the justify content, but it is on the cross axis, whereas the justify content is working on the main axis. Okay, so now I will do one thing. I will just remove the axis. Now we don't want them anymore. And I will just give a height to my container and I will give them a 400 pixel height. And now you can see that when I give a 400 pixel height, it's more visible that it's in the center. And if I do it on the flex start again, then it will go on the top. And by default, it was on the stretch. So now it will take the complete height of my flex container. All right, let's make it to center again. Okay, and the next property is I want to show is the align content. And the align content property, if I write it at center, but you will not see anything because the align property is only works when you have a content on the new line. So to get the content on the new line, let me have one more item so that we can get a content on the new line. So I will add one more item here and I will give it as item 4 and I will make it as item 4 and I'll save it. All right. So now you can see that now we have the 4 items and I want the item content to be the aligned content to be in center. So if I try to shrink it, but it will not work still because currently the flex wrap is the no wrap and there is no content on the second line. So I have to uncomment this and I will save it. So now as soon as I save it, you can see that now all the four flex items are aligned center. So if I want to make it as the align flex start, then I'll save it, and now it is the flex start. You can see if I want to make it flex end, then there will be a flex end. They all will go at the bottom. And the align content has all the same values as of justify content, but it's only on the justify content was on the main axis and the align content is on the cross axis. So if I want to do a space around or space between, then this will give me a space between. You cannot see the space between, so I will just increase this so that you can see, now you can see that there is a space between. Or if I want to have a space around, then I will have a space around. So this will give there is a space around. So these were some of the properties which you can apply on the parent or the flex container. And there is a shorthand. I mean, you don't need to write all this. You can directly have a flex flow, and you can give the flex flow as I want the flex flow to be row and a wrap, and I'll save it. And now I can remove this direction and I can remove this, and it will still give me the same result. So the flex flow is the shorthand for the flex direction and flex wrap. And if I remove this and make it no wrap, then you can see that again everything is in the one line. So the flex properties are really cool, and it really makes easy to design the layouts, because it's very easy to distribute the space, to do the alignment, to do the justification of the content. So that's the power of the flex box. All right, so now let me remove this all, and this time we will do the flex direction as column. And now you can see that all the items are in the column. So I will do one thing. I will just remove the flex 4. Now we don't want the flex 4, and I'll save it. All right. So now if I want to justify this content in center, then I will write justify content center. But you need to remember that now the flex direction is the column. So the justify center will go along the main axis, and this time the main axis will be the vertical line. So you won't be able to see anything. Let me increase the height of our container so that we can see it gets in the center. All right, so now you can see that it is in the vertically center. And you can use the same values like flex end. It will go to end of the container. It will go start, then it will go start of the container. If you want to have a space around, then you can do space around, space between, or space evenly. Let me try space evenly. So now you can see there is an even space. Okay, so now if you want to have the alignment on the cross axis, which is the horizontal line this time, then I will do align items center, and the content will be now in the center. Let me remove this height now, and I will save it. So now you can see the content is in the center. So if I want this content to be end, then I'll use flex end. It will go to the end of the container, but on the cross axis. And then I can do start. We'll go to the start. All right, so now we have seen the properties. I mean, you can use all the same properties which you use for the flex direction row. The properties are same. The only thing is the flow direction, whether it's a row or whether it's a column. So the next we will see about the child elements and what properties we can apply to the flex items. I will change this to row back. Okay, and I am going to do this stretch. Okay, so now let's see what properties we can apply to the child or the flex items. You can notice that when I try to reduce my screen width, then the flex item, they start shrinking and they try to fit themselves in the container itself. But if I don't want that they get shrink and I still want them to be fit into the container, then I can apply flex shrink 0. Now you will see that item 1 will be taking the complete width which has, and now only the item 2 and item 3 will shrink when the screen size reduces. All right, now if I do the flex shrink to second item as well and I save it, then now only the third item will shrink itself and not the flex 1 and flex 2. Okay, the next property I want to show is the flex grow, and let me give flex grow as 1. Initially I want that all the three flex items should have a same flex grow. So if I now increase the width or increase the screen size, then you will see that all the three items are growing in an equal proportion. So this is the power of Flexbox, how easily you are able to make the responsive layouts. Okay, so we can also make the grow in different proportions. So now I want that my item 1 should be grow twice as of item 1 and flex item 3, and I will save it. Now if I increase the width, you will see that the item 1 is growing in a 2:1 ratio with item 2 and item 3, but it's not exactly 2:1 ratio, but yes, it's trying to take all the available space in it. But if you want that the item 1 should be exactly twice of item 2 or item 3, then you can have a flex basis 0. Let me add the flex basis 0 to all the three elements. Okay, now you can see that the item 1 is exactly twice of item 2 or item 3. So when you apply the flex basis 0, it will, so initially the width of the item 1 was 120. So it will try to nullify that and it will calculate the complete container width, and then it will divide proportionately with 2:1:1, and it will give the twice width to item 1 and the 1:1 to item 2 and item 3. Now I also want my flex 2 to grow twice. So in this case, the flex 1 and flex 2 will grow in a very similar width, but they will be twice of the flex item 3. So now you can see as the screen size grows, the flex items also grows proportionately. All right. And the third one I want to show you is that now I have written three properties: the flex shrink, flex grow, and basis. We can write all three in a single shorthand way. Like we have a flex, and the first one will be the flex grow. I want to grow twice. And the next one is the shrink. I want 0. And the third one is the basis. And I'll save it. You will still see the results are same. So that is the shorthand way of writing the shrink, grow, and basis. All right, so the next property I'm going to show you is the align self. And by using align self, you can align the individual flex items. So before I show you the align self, let me show you something on the flex container. So if I apply align item on the flex container, and by default we have a stretch, so now all the flex items are stretch. But now if you want to override the align item on an individual flex item, then we can use align self. And let me add align self to my item 1, and I want my item 1 to be align self as center, and I'll save it. Then you can see that now the item 1 is in center. So we have override the align item property of the flex container by an align self property of the flex item. And if I want that my flex item 2 should be aligned on start, so let me add flex start, and it will go to the flex start. So this was the align self. You use align self whenever you want to override the flex container property of align items, then you can use align self for the individual flex items. And the last property I want to show on the flex items is the order. You can change the order as well. Let me give it order 3. I'm going to give this order 1, and let me give order of 2, and I'll save it. Now you can see that the order is now changed. So it's very easy to change the order of the elements in any way you want to change it. So let's recall the properties which we used for the flex container and the flex item. So the flex container, the first property is if we want to make a box as a flex container box, then we just need to add display flex. And when you add a display flex, by default, it takes the direction of row, and that becomes the main axis as a horizontal line. All right, then after that, if you want to align the content on the main axis or the horizontal line, you can align it by justify content. And similarly, if you want to do it on the cross axis, then you use align items. If you want that my items should not fit in a same in a single row and they should get to the next line as the screen width reduces, then you can use Flexwrap. And when you use Flexwrap, you have your content get on the next line. And with the content on the next line, then you can align that content on your cross axis via align content. And you can, and align content is the same property as the justify content, but it's only the difference of the axis. Justify content do it on the main axis, whereas the align content do it on the cross axis. And for the child or the flex items, we can use the flex shrink if we don't want the flex or the child item to shrink when the screen size reduce. We use the flex shrink. If we want the flex to grow in a proportionate of the other flex items, then we use the flex grow. And if we want that it should grow exactly uh, in a proportion of 1:2 or 2:1, then we use flex basis 0, because flex basis 0 will nullify the default width and then recalculate the flex container width and then reapply to the flex items. And the last one is you can change the order of your flex items. Flexbox is very cool. With some few properties, you can design some very good layouts, and you don't have to worry about the responsiveness, because Flex layout will help you to make your layouts responsive as well. So I hope you like the video, and a thumbs up is appreciated. Please subscribe my channel so that I can create more videos, and press the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Thanks for watching.